Wonderful. Let's go ahead and begin. I'll say a couple of things here uh, to start with. I'm Jeff O'Keefe. I know many or most of you here. I'm the executive director of Zen Peacemakers, and I so appreciate you joining us today for this special meeting with our dear friend Violet Ketches. Violet is a medicine woman elder from Lakota. And we will be together with Violet here in just a few weeks in Wyoming for our plunge up at the Medicine Wheel in the Bighorn Mountains. And I know more than a few of you are attending. Anyone else who is inclined, we have room. Registration is still open. We encourage you to come for the week. We would love to see you. And if you have any questions, you can connect with me afterwards. Uh, And I will say at this point, Violet uh, has her video turned off. Her connection is not as fast, and in order to make sure that we hear her well, she's got her video turned off. I think Hoden is going to put up an image, share an image here so we can see, and Violet may turn her video on for a moment to say hello as well. So. We will share some time with Violet, and we'll have an opportunity towards the end of our time for comments, questions, and connections. And once again, I think a lot of people here have spent time with Violet in the past, so this is really kind of a nice, warm homecoming. It feels like to me. So, Violet, I'm hoping your connection is working okay. And if so, would you like to please take over? There you are.
Okay. I'm turning my video on for just a little bit. Uh, First of all, hello everybody, and wanted to have a minute of silence. Is that what you wanted? Yes.
Let's do Violet. Yeah.
Before we begin, we always begin with a prayer for anything we do, and so I would go ahead and say I'm going to sing a prayer song just for that, for the in place of the prayer. So, 와니까 채워기에로 하여. Oh, I'm going to go ahead and start. I believe that I'm a voice for our ancestors. Our ancestors did not have a voice in what our life, our future was going to be. Our ancestors lost pieces of a culture, were running in their own homelands from a people who came to civilize, to colonize, to Christianize, because they believed our people had no souls. And so until we became baptized and given a proper name, we could not be human. That is what my ancestors cannot say. And so I'm going to start with that. and we had the animal nations once. All of the little creatures that walk the earth and the two-legged, the human beings. That was our worldview. That was their worldview. that they left to us. I'm going to dedicate today's talk to, first of all the boarding school kids that didn't come home, all the boarding school kids that are being found today. I'm also going to read you. This bird keeps following me for the last 2 months. They even fly in front of my car as I'm leaving campus. They're telling me something, but I don't know what they're telling me. So I wrote a story about them and that I will read before I begin my talk. I'm sorry that I am so sad for the lives of the little children found in Canada. They were helpless, youngest one being about 3 years old. I can relate to this stuff, but they were from the first one to take it. So the bird is the morning dove. So I wrote this piece for the morning dove who continues to follow me every day to sing their song. So here goes. Morning dove, my relative. I don't know where you came from, but you've been at our side. On the old Bigfoot trail between the two pieces of land where the Oglala and the Minikanju dwell. You were with us in the 1950s at the old abandoned church on the trail where we camped for the night so the horses could rest. You sang your mournful song. You've been everywhere we go, singing. You were here with us during the pandemic, telling us all will be okay. Morning dove, like us, you too carry memories and a voice for our ancestors, Wopila. So after reading that to you and telling you, a mourning dove has one of the first birds uh, of our ancestors, the wakia, the thunderbird. That's the name we call them, the mourning dove and the pigeon. And I really truly don't know where they came from, if they were part of creation here or anything, but we don't have any stories about them. We have stories about many, many things, but not them. My bandwidth is getting low, so I'm going to stop my video and continue. I am going to do that now. Hold on. Born in Bridger, a small community in on the Cheyenne River Sioux Tribe Reservation. I was born into being a descendant of the Hohoju of the Bigfoot band massacred at Wounded Knee. So next week we're going to Washington D.C. The Buffalo Soldiers are introducing um, uh, I don't know what it's called politically, but they're going to uh, ask to rescind the medals of honor given to the ones at Wounded Knee in that time, at that time, in on December 29th, 1890. My grandfather, Leon Holy, was a survivor. He and three other boys ran from Wounded Knee back to Bridger, and he grew up there. And I will come back to that later on. And so my mother's that he is my mother's father. My mother's mother is a blue hair, and her mother was, they called her Wasu Hale. She was a medicine woman, and she lived until I think 1945. But she was at Wounded Knee as well. She was one of the survivors as well. She and her family. Um, my grandmother may have been born 1893. My mother's mother. So I feel like I'm linked very close to them because of the stories that my grandmother told. And so I actually the stories that I tell are the words of my grandmother. So our people lived on these reservations. We had nowhere to go. Some of our people are on the Oglala Sioux tribe. Some of them are in Rosebud. Some of us, most of us, are in Cheyenne River Sioux tribe, and some of them are in Standing Rock, and some of them did not return from Canada. So we have all of that. And so I was born in 1950 on a cold winter night. They said it was a blizzard. And at the time that I was born, a woman who had died that day, they were having her wake to bury her. February 14th, 1950. I was baptized Catholic at that time and named Violet Helena Catches. My childhood name is Napshawin, Shushunaskawin, Secha Ho, or Sete Ho. I had these childhood names that different people called me, and they didn't really know my English name. So we went to church every Sunday. My grandmother took us all to church, Catholic church. Catholic church at the time was in Latin, so we learned Latin and Lakota. We knew Lakota. We were Latin into Lakota, the Lord's Prayer, the Rosary, a lot of the entire Mass actually, but they never had it in Lakota. It was just translated for us to understand what was going on in church for the adults. So at the same time, our religion was forbidden, just forbidden. If they still had ceremonies, the medicine men or women were locked up, but they couldn't hold them for anything, so they would let them go. So there were a lot of our ceremonies. Our grandfather, my grandmother's brother, uh, would get taken to jail about 90 miles away to the other side of the reservation. We lived on one end, and the tribal buildings were in the headquarters were at the other end on the east end. We were west end, and that was the east end. And so he would have to walk back from there, hitch a ride, and he would always be back sometime the next day or the following day. He would come back, and so that was life, you know. And when I was 4 years old, I went to St. Joseph's Indian School. St. Joseph's Indian School is in Chamberlain, South Dakota. Um, I think Jeff has some photos of that place. Um, so we were sent there, and right from the beginning, my mouth got washed off with soap. I got slapped around. I got slapped on the long side of the head. I got hit on my mouth. I'm going to go into details for this because when I see you and I talk to you at our retreats or plunge, I don't tell you these things. I just kind of tell you what, what little uh, I can share without getting in deeper. So, and we got locked in closets. And I never knew why we were locked in closets because I didn't understand English. These were people of God, church people from the Catholic faith. They were sisters, they were nuns. They threw us in the closets. So during just oh since they found the 215 children up in Canada, I've been reading the experiences of other uh, survivors of these boarding schools, and I believe I'm a survivor of those boarding schools. So I'm a survivor not only of a massacre, but of a way of life that's foreign to us. And so someone wrote in there, we were locked in dark closets because we spoke our language. This was from the Cree tribe, from the Chippewa tribe. And it's like, ding, it hit a bell in my head. Oh, that's why they locked us in those closets. Here I am, 71 years old. I didn't know why we were locked in those closets. And that was why. So I started thinking back in the last 2 weeks to my life at the dorms. And I kind of remember experienced a little bit of some of those times. There would be at least four of us girls in a closet, and I think it's a closet where the furnace was. I'm not sure, but there was something big in there, so we had to crawl in there when they lock us in there. We had to crawl behind. Two girls were behind each one, and the other two. And then I realized that after reading this post this year, 2021, something happening way back in 1950, 55, 56. 54 included. I didn't get locked in closets when I was 4, but when I was 5, they did. When I was 6, they did. For all the years that I was at St. Joseph's, I did get locked up in closets, not knowing why. They would grab us by our hair, the top of our forehead, grab us and pull us, not nicely, hurtfully, with us screaming and crying, throwing us into a closet and said to say prayers, told us to say prayers in there because we were such big sinners. I guess I didn't know speaking my language was a sin at that time. So as I was thinking back to those days, I realized at one time, just one time, the four of us girls that were locked up in this closet were the girls that spoke to each other in our language. We were the ones. And in the basement of this church here was the dorms. There was more additions, but this is an older, probably one of the very first pictures of the place. And later on, more buildings were um, built on. So so during that time also when we went we had breakfast, so we always had to this prayer is ingrained. God bless our food. Amen. We had to have our hands folded in front of us, and our lips had to be moving so the nun could see it. Otherwise, she would come over and swat someone on the head whose lips were not moving for breakfast, lunch, dinner, supper, prayers. life there was not like the life at home with our grandma. That was a safe place. That was the safest place in the world, but we didn't know it. They didn't know how we were being treated at school. Every time we entered the classroom, we had to make the sign of the cross with holy water, sit down at our desks, and sit properly. If we weren't sitting properly, they used their ruler to hit us across our back. So everybody learned how to sit properly. And when she came in, the teacher came in, usually a nun, we all stood up and said the Lord's Prayer. And then we sat down and class began. Whatever it was that she was doing, we had to repeat after her a lot. And during that, and we were learning to read and teaching us the alphabet. They were teaching us sounds of the letter just to prepare us to read. If we don't have some letters in Lakota that the English has, like the sound of F as in Frank, V as in Victor. We don't have those. We didn't have R's. We don't have no R's. And I can't remember what other ones we don't have right off the top of my head right now. But what happens was, as we're reading, if we came up to words that begin with the letter F, they were usually a B or a M sound that we used, and we'd get hit for that. And then I remember reading one time, when I learned to read, I was reading, and I said, and the word at the end word was star, and so I ended with the word star because I have no R. She came over and grabbed my hand, and I knew what was going to happen. I just didn't know how bad it was going to hurt. She had the ruler. Rulers back in the 50s had a metal insertion for a straight edge kind of thing, you know. So on the back of my hand, she held my hand on the back of my hand. She whacked me hard with that ruler, and automatic reflex was pulling it away, and I jerked away from her, and I tried to crawl under my desk and chairs. You know, they were wooden back then. So she grabbed me and she sat me back up, and forcefully. I mean, it was bad. And then she grabbed my other hand, and this time I knew what was coming, so I sat, and I guess I must have tensed up, and the blood squirted out of my hand, and the girl next to me started crying. And I told her, I looked at her, I said, Inila. And she got quiet. Inila means be quiet, but not harsh. It's not harsh because I didn't want her to get hit like me, but she did anyway. 4 or 5 times they hit us. I had scars on the back of my hands. I still do. Life there was terrible. For food, they made us eat something called mush and had big lumps in it, and we didn't want to eat it. One girl had a bowl of it dumped into her mouth all over the front of her. This nun was so angry. She just held it and it was hot. And she was screaming, crying, she was gurgling. It was really hard. We couldn't stand up and help her because if we did, the same thing is going to happen to us. Anything we didn't want to eat most of the time was forth into our mouths. When I was in my 30s, I prayed a lot for these nuns and these priests. I did. Even to this day, I pray for them because they didn't know. And I think we, a lot of us really never thought about it, never talked about those days with each other, even though we were at the same school. So now it's bedtime. It's time to go to bed. We all march up there, I think by groups of 10. I'm not sure. But the little ones went up first, and we had to climb stairways in that building there. So we climbed up these stairways, and we would have to stop and wait for the first group. And when we got when we got up there, we had to go and take our clothes off, change, and put our night clothes on. Go was ready. It was us little girls, middle-sized girls, and big girls. The school went from uh, primary to 8th grade. So I like tell you, I was a little girl. Maybe I was 5 or 6. So we said a prayer, and then we went to bed. And I used to go to sleep right away because with my living with grandma, when the sun goes down, you go to bed, you go to sleep. So I had no problem sleeping in those first years. And then I was maybe 7 or 8, and the same thing. We marched upstairs by groups, got ready for bed, did the same thing, knelt at the foot of our beds until it was ready. And I had a friend. Her name was Viola, and she slept in a bed next to me. And one time, her arm came and she was poking at me, and I was sleeping, but she woke me up, and I knew I had to be quiet. And it was dark, and I looked at her, and she was laying sideways, and she patted her fingers up to her mouth, like, you know. Here there was a nun walking around in the room, and then she went up to a girl, the big girls, and we were watching her because I was laying facing towards Viola on my side, and the girl was like the third row away from us. This is a huge dorm bedroom. There were 4 rows of single beds. I mean, maybe 10 beds to each row. And way down there where the big girls were, this nun woke up a girl, and we watched her, and she took her, and there's a place where there's Mary and Jesus. There were like statues, and there's you have you kneel there to pray. And the nun was, you know sometimes while we're doing this, one of the nuns is kneeling there praying, either in front of Jesus statue or Mary statue. So they would be kneeling there praying. Well, this nun took the girl. See, by this time we all understood English to a minimum, I think. And she said, "Why?" And she said, "Because you sinned." and then and then so she and then she left. And then in the there's a bigger there's a bed, the dorms, and to the bedroom part of the dorms where, you know,
It looks like Violet dropped out.
Let's let's just be still here for a moment and share being together, and I will chat Violet behind and ask her to dial back in.
can you hear me? Jeff?
Yes, yes, Violet. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks for dialing back.
Okay. Where, at what point did I drop out?
It was just a minute ago, so we're pretty close to where you were.
Okay. So this nun, um, uh, the very tall nun, she came out. We heard the door squeak, and Viola turned around, and then she covered her head real fast, and I did the same. She came and took that girl, and quietly. All this was quietly. So this went on for maybe several nights. Same thing, and Viola would always wake me up, and we'll be, you know, looking at, and then pretty soon one of the girls start crying, and no, she was saying no, I don't want to go in there, and the nun was like, no, you get over here, you have to go and pray, repent your sins. And the girl said, I did not sin. She was crying. And by that time, a whole bunch of us little girls were sitting up. And the nun turned the lights on. Everybody, get out of your bed, kneel down at the foot of your bed, and you pray. Say the Lord's Prayer 5 times. It was always 5 times. So we obeyed while they were uh, taking that girl, and that girl got taken into that room. Well, that happened over the years until, you know, I left the school. It was probably still happening, and I think those big girls were being sexually abused at that time, but we didn't know it. We were little girls. We didn't know what that was all about, and so today I know now. You know, I'm my eyes seen, my ears heard those things that happened at that school. I just didn't know what they were at that time. In the life, when I realized in my 30s, I have to tell you this, between from my 20s to 30s, there's about a 16-year span that I used alcohol. I never used drugs. I smoked pot. I did all these things. I didn't know why. My father lived in Chicago, and he sent for me in 1979. Finally, I went there, stayed there for about a year, came back, and 1983, I went back for good. And I was in my 30s, and my dad is an alcoholic counselor, but I don't believe, I'll tell you what I told him. I don't believe that I'm an alcoholic. I don't believe in that. Somebody made that up. God didn't give us those. That's what I told him. So I don't think I am an alcoholic, because he took me to his meetings. But I went to college, and when I took ed psych, I took a psychology class in the ed psych, and our instructor, one powerful woman, she told us much, you cannot be a teacher. I was studying to be a teacher, bilingual, bicultural teacher to teach my language. And at the time, it was all new, all new. I had worked prior in the 70s at Rapid City Public Schools as a bilingual aide, teacher's aide. So my intention was to become a teacher, and I did, but it took some time. So in the when I was in my 30s, I entered when I was in 1984. I enrolled in a class, and I took two two majors. One is to study federal law, uh, federal law applied to reservations, tribal laws. I did that, and then I took bilingual bicultural education for elementary ed. And so during that time, I became very aware of addictions, of myself as being addicted if I chose to be, or I can choose to let things go because I know it's not good for me. So that's what I did. But it took this. My mother was struck by a drunk driver and killed. My mother never drank in her life. My mother was a traditional woman who barely knew how to talk English. I was 35 at that time. And I let go that way of life and realize now that it's not a way of life. It's not even. So, anyway, so I told my dad, I said, I don't believe that. I said, that that alcohol is here. I did because what I liked doing or what I was swimming in self pity on at that time killed my mom. Told him, we all made that was yours. I forgive you. She was my mom. And I said, she loved you just as much as she loved me. But my other sibling would not forgive him. I don't know if they ever did before they left this earth, because they all did except for one brother. Well, so the boarding school days didn't come into my head until I was taken. I went to college, and then I started, and I didn't even know anything about grieving, and I didn't grieve my grandma. She passed away when I was 10 years old. I haven't grieved for her, and when I was 35, 30 in my 30s, maybe 34, I grieved for her for the first time. So I had all these experiences, and my belief, first of all, is in creator, the way that my grandma taught me. There's one creator in the entire universe, and different in all people, different people from all different cultures call him by a name. That's why she says in English they say God. In Lakota we say Tongashila. We another word for him that we just don't use. Actually are in prayer. So we say Tongashila to talk about him. But he was creator. He created our worldviews and all of this for us. And I have my strongest belief is in that, and I still have a lot of respect uh, for um, in the time that I was in doing in my 30s, I became a Christian, non-Catholic Christian. I never, as a Catholic, I never really knew anything about the life of Jesus. I became a Baptist in Chicago after my mother passed away and I stopped drinking. I went to the Indian Center. Um, there's a pastor there. He was Choctaw, and I enjoyed learning about Jesus from him. So I asked him one day. I said, "Jesus, was that his real name?" And he looked at me. He said, "No." I said, "Was he English like Americans?" "No." "Well, then Jesus was a medicine man," I told him, and he started laughing. He said, "What do you mean Jesus was a medicine man?" I said, "Look at all the stories you told about him. Look at all the things he did. That's what our medicine men do. That's what our medicine women do. They perform miracles. So Jesus was a medicine man long time ago somewhere. Do they still have those ways?" "No." I said, "Oh, that's sad." You know? And to this day, I have Jesus in my heart. I ask him to help me see things, and he does. Just like I ask my Tunkachilas. Sometimes the birds, sometimes the buffalo, sometimes the wolf, never the elk, sometimes beavers. You can even ask the skunk something and he might give you an answer if he chooses. That's our way of life, natural. Everything is natural. And I try my best to live in this modern world to our old way of life. So our people were massacred at Wounded Knee in 1890. They ran from there. They actually thought they were safe, but then came the government and the churches and the schools. They started taking children away. And that's a whole different story. So I'm going to cut that one short. But my mom's dad had two sisters. One was Mabel, one was Julia. They were taken from their parents and taken to boarding school at Susan in Rapid City, South Dakota. And they were never heard from again. My mom's dad wrote letters about his sisters. And he got a reply long after he passed away. So they didn't know anything about them because records were burned, and so they don't know what happened to some of the kids. Well, about 5 years ago, they found the grave of his sister named Mabel Holy. So we have a website for that, and I don't know the website right at the moment I'm talking, but it's Rapid City Indian School Boarding, Rapid City uh, Indian Boarding School. I think that's the website, and her name is on there. Her name was Mabel. The other one is Julia Holy, and she may she may have come home, but I don't think so because they didn't talk about her. They talked about everybody else that had passed away. I feel like I know them even though they passed away because they talked about them in our home. It was healthy, it was okay, it was good because they lived and they had their experiences and they were on this earth. They walked, and they talked, they ate, they did all these things, as a human being. And so my mother was named Mabel Julia Holy. So it came as a shock. My grandma said one time, they took Mabel to the boarding school and she never came back. I was a little girl when she said that, maybe about 7, 8. From the boarding school, we got to come home in the 50s. We got to come home for the summer. The people before us didn't come home until they didn't come home. They never came home. Some of them came home later in life and when they were older, but most of them never came home. The kids that were taken away in the 1890s, 1900s, early 1900s. So, so we know they're somewhere buried. They have to be, but we don't know where. We don't even know what schools they were taken to. They were loaded in boxcars at Phillips, South Dakota, some of them. Our ancestors, the grandma, the great grandmas, great grandpas got in their wagon and team, just like I used to go around with my grandma and team in wagon when I was a little girl to travel far. And so they followed them. So they made camps near the schools, even for the school where I'm sitting right now, boarding school, Pure Indian Learning Center. This is where I work. This is where I teach Lakota, Ojibwe, and Omaha. And so I learned things about their culture too. But back to this Wounded Knee. So they took them away and they never came back. They never came back. I don't know what happened to them, but there's a singer that made a song about Wounded Knee. You know, we were all there. We were all there. And now I used to hear this song way back in the 80s. Yeah, in 80s, late 70s and 80s, and from there on. But I never really thought about that song. But now I know we were all there at Wounded Knee. We were all there, all the nations on this continent, North America, all of the tribes. I feel sad. Thank you, everybody. I'll stop here.
Thank you, Violet. Violet, would you like the music video right now?
Yes, please. Maybe that'll help me to read.
Thank you, Violet, dear. Hoden, please. Hoden, is there more to that or did it stop?
I'm sorry. Let me restart that.
Destiny, you and me, you and me, you and me. They made us many promises Seventh Cavalry. You and me, you and me. We were all wounded at Wounded Knee. You and me, we were all wounded at Wounded Knee. You and me, in the name of manifest destiny. You and me, you and me, you and me. Now we make our promises. We won't break our word. We'll sing, sing, sing out our story till the truth is heard. There's a whole new generation, kids who dream of veneration, who were not wiped out by the Seventh Cavalry. You and me, you and me. We were all wounded at Wounded Knee. You and me, we were all wounded.
Thanks, Hoden, for running that. And Violet has chatted us down below. That's a band called Redbone from the early 70s. They're Native American and Mexican American band that was the first Native American popular band to reach the Billboard Top 5, just as a historical aside. We've got some time, Violet. I think you have some time here. So and we've got. Thank you everyone for staying with us the whole hour, and we really appreciate this attention and presence, to be sure. If people have questions or comments for Violet, there are more of you than I can see on one screen. So if you would please use, if you go down under reactions, you can raise your electronic hand, and I'll try to recognize you, and then you can unmute yourself. So please, let's have a little discussion or Q&A or just comments for Violet if you have them. Jitsu Joe, I see your hand. So go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Violet. My name's Jitsu Joe. And I really appreciated you telling your story about the school, the boarding school. I also went to Catholic school, and there was a little bit of abuse, not to the extent that you said, but it made me think about my own childhood and how normal I just thought that was. Like the nun, I remember she would walk around with a cutting board, and in kindergarten, I was 5, and she would slap it on her hand, and she called it the Board of Education, and students would get called into a back room, and I didn't know what happened to them. And I guess they would get hit by it. That's what she seemed like she was saying. I don't know if I even talked to the kids, but they would come back crying, and it was for such little things like not writing correctly or not making a line straight. I remember being really confused, and I guess I just appreciated hearing that as really not right, and not, it was the nun who was doing it. And I remember as an adult, that same nun that was my kindergarten teacher ran a grief group that my mom was in. And I remember it was only like about 15 years ago. And I told my mom, I was like, that nun, used to hit us as kids. Like I'd never told her. It's just so strange. And my mom was like, I don't believe it. And I was like, she did. Very strange. And so thank you for that. Thank you for helping me see my own trauma a little more clearly. And the other thing I really appreciate is the way you talked about the way you used alcohol to, like, you spoke about it in a way that I received as a way that you just needed, you just did, you didn't understand why, but just maybe as a way to process that trauma. It was like the only tool you had or something. So I don't know if that makes sense, but I just heard it in a new way, and it sounded really compassionate. So thank you. I don't know if you have any comments about that.
Thank you. Well, no comments on the alcohol and stuff part, but comments on the way that the nuns, treated us, and yet as children, we didn't talk about it to the adults in our lives at that time, and I just wonder why we didn't. We would come home and we'd just be so happy to get home for the summer, you know, and we'd hug our grandmother, or she'd um, uh, give us hugs, and talk Indian to us, and I was one of the lucky ones not to forget. The first year, I forgot, but then my brother and our cousin really helped me to remember really fast. I mean, like a day or two, and me over by the ditch and where we always play. We used to play cowboys and Indians and stuff. But anyway, they'd take me over there and they'll start talking to me, and I'll be looking at them. I remember looking at their mouths, but not hearing what they're saying. And I don't know. One day, my cousin said, uh, you need to wake up deep inside, or something like that in our language. And that like hit home. I said, Taku. That was the first thing I said in our language. And they started laughing. Hey, how'd you do that? And they told me, forget it again. I said, he started talking Indian, you know? So it was just kind of amazing. But what really puzzles me over the time and all my thinking about these things is that why didn't you talk to your mother when you were in kindergarten about how mean this nun was? You know, that's a mystery of, I don't know if it's a mystery, but that's puzzling. Why didn't we? You know, but I think at the time the teachers were like the government workers that had the upper hand on everybody. That's the way I kind of see. Thank you. I hope I did. I answer.
Thank you.
My cut
That's
off.
great. Yeah,
Oh,
I don't know why. I don't know why we never said anything as kids either. But thank you.
Thank you, Jitsudo. Thanks, Violet. Uh, Jean Paul, you've chatted a comment, and if you're comfortable doing so, if you'd like to unmute and speak your comment, that would be fine too. Or otherwise, I think you chatted it to everyone, perhaps, or not. It's okay if not.
I can read the question. Where is
Oh yeah, good. Thanks. Thank you, Violet.
okay. So his question is, Violet, is there anything we can do to ease or to heal your pain? I'm going to answer that part. I don't think anyone can do anything in this historical trauma, intergenerational trauma, or generational trauma. I don't know that, but this trauma is, we live with it. Our grandmas told us never forget, but always forgive. And in my younger days, back to the alcohol days, I didn't care. I was violent. I was angry at the wrong things, about the wrong things, you know? And eventually when I became sober, when I came to my senses, um, and from that time on to today, from the 35 years ago, 35, I don't know, I'm 71. So whenever that was, 1985, I'll just use that date. From there on until now, I still live with the pain. Some days the pain are at the worst I can imagine, and I cry. My grandmother did that. I think I think that to ease the pain is something that is going to happen in a natural occurrence. It's either going to happen or it's not. It's my pain. It's the pain of my ancestors. I am their voice. I'm here to share some of the things that they can't they're not here to talk about. And for the most part, living with that pain for me is a good remembrance of Wounded Knee, of the boarding school happenings, of how our people were mistreated. I heard some words in that song, herded, you know, herded, herded onto the reservations. That's another story from the 1868 treaty site. What did they do from Fort Robinson, uh, Fort Robinson and the Red Cloud? That was part of where Red Cloud. That's where Pine Ridge should actually be, and in Nebraska right now. From the meeting that they had, they gathered as much of the Lakota people, so there were thousands there, and how they were herded into different groups to go to different, for example, to the different leaders put on at different places. Whether you belong to that group or not, you were herded there. They said, no, we don't belong there. No, you're going there. Stories my grandma told. So I really appreciate your question because, you know, this pain that we live with is for our ancestors. And to forgive you personally today, I I I can say I forgive you, but for what? We had nothing to do with it, you and I, or anyone here today. We are working toward making life better for all people, for many cultures, for all where all these things happen, you know? And so I think that I don't have the right to forgive a whole nation, I don't. I can I can say I forgive someone, but there's many, many others like me who continue in pain. They're on the streets, homeless. If there's anything that you want to do, go see them, go talk to them, ask them what their pain is. They don't know. It's all covered deep in alcohol and drugs because it's denial. It's not selfishness because of the helplessness that you feel when you're in that place. You feel totally helpless. So I hope I answered Jean Paul's question.
Thank you, Violet. I think you did quite well. And if I might, let me ask a question that may be on others' minds here too, Violet, if I could. And I think it's probably a fairly easy answer. We have people attending here from Brazil and from Switzerland and Canada and other places outside of the U.S. and then a lot of Americans as well. And perhaps everyone doesn't know the current situation. Are there still Native American kids going to these schools, or have all of these schools been closed?
Many of these schools are still open. One of my girls goes to the Flandreau Indian boarding school. The boarding schools today are not the boarding schools of yesterday. The boarding schools today are a lot safer, a lot safer than public schools for many of our children, so that they can actually learn, and they do. And I work at this boarding school where culture is is really um, important, and the language of these children is important. And this is why I teach, my native language here, Lakota. And my native language has three dialects. There are Lakota, Nakota, and Dakota. And so I do my best to teach, where I know the differences. Ojibwe, I'm just learning as I teach, and I learn it from online from Minnesota, University of Minnesota. I think has a dictionary out. I did meet a Rose Barstow who taught us a semester of Ojibwe way back in the 80s when I went to college in Chicago. It's called Native American Educational Studies of Services, and that's where I graduated from. But she came there for a semester and taught us Ojibwe, and from that I only remember miigwech. It was so long ago, but I know a lot more words today. And then the other language that I'm teaching is Omaha, and people from the Turtle Mountain. We serve like 15 different states, 50, 3 different states, and 15 different reservations at my school, and they come here every year, and it's for me, I think this boarding school is one of the exceptional schools for the young kids. But I always worry, about the natural the natural way of life. You have mom and dad, and you get your experiences from mom and dad, and that's also conflicted today, because of alcohol and all of this, or homelessness. Sometimes some people are homeless and they're not alcoholics. They're just homeless because they cannot afford, and I know some of those people too, and it's just sad. They live on the streets, and they have no trade, they have no education like that. But there are many other reservation boarding schools open in the United States, and I think they're all St. Joseph's is one of them, but it has changed quite a bit. That's the one that I went to, and I visited there, and I've seen they have like apartment buildings, and they have dorm parents. And I had two grandsons that went to school there, and they loved it. They loved it, and I always get kind of little chilly when I go there, but I go there. I like to visit. I had childhood friends there, friends that I've never seen again, because we had people from Turtle Mountain there. We had people from Macy, Nebraska, Winnebago, Nebraska. we had different tribes at these different schools. So yes, I hope I answered that.
You did, Violet. Thank you very, very much. And I think we can hope that with Deb Holland in charge of things these days, maybe we'll see some some improvement. Let's see. I see a couple of hands. Arthur, do you want to unmute yourself and go ahead and we've got a few more minutes here. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Sean, and thank you, Violet, for sharing your story with me and with everybody. I I feel like I am being brought to my senses, which I feel really grateful for, because no matter where you are when you're in your senses, or no matter where I am when I'm in my senses, I know that I'm at least in my senses, and
Yes.
and that's really important, and has been really important in my life to feel that my feet are on the ground, or at least they are somewhere, and to feel my feet is really important. So I'm just really thankful that you shared your story, and thankful to be into my senses no matter where they're taking me.
Thanks, Arthur.
Thank you. Yes, I was just going to say, I think it's really important that we are conscious of, of where we are, especially these days, where we are at all times and what we're doing, and notice around us, because not only is the boarding school uh, one of those things that in the past, it, to me, I see it as the first time children were taken, and now they're stealing women and children today as we speak, being stolen daily, taken. We don't see them again unless they're found, sometimes alive, sometimes not. This is another thing going on in the United States and Canada that a lot of people are working on. It's another issue. Thank you, Arthur. I just, appreciate your words. Thank you.
I see, and I want to say Elise, but I think you might be that's very exotic, isn't it? It might be an abbreviation for Elizabeth. So
it is an abbreviation. It's just Elizabeth without the abeth at the end. So Eliz. Violet, I just wanted to express my gratitude deeply for you sharing your story and your ancestor stories, and how how people continue to live through that. And I thank you for that. But I'm especially calling because of the story that you started about the birds and the mourning dove that is been following you, because there's a mourning dove that's been roosting on my back porch that's never been here in like the 7 or 8 years that I've lived here, and is just continually showing up. And it's been really interesting, because that's not somebody who usually joins me on the back porch. And so that deep connection, that feels like a deep connection, and I just wanted to express gratitude and name that. Thank you.
Wow, and thank you too.
We have a few more minutes. If anyone has a comment or a question or a share or hi, Ginger. Yes, please go ahead and unmute. Thank you. Good to see you.
Hi, how are you? I'm Ginger. Violet, thank you so much for sharing. It's like, I think there's a lot of healing in that. Just need to breathe. I was born and raised in Hong Kong. So it's a British colony. And I think I went to a Catholic school also. And I felt like I don't belong most of my like adult life, childhood, because I was neither Chinese nor English. So like I relate a lot to what you said. I think we weren't like physically or like asked not to like belong to our own culture, but I think we were psychologically trained to be English rather than Chinese. And I think it, you know, what you said sort of have a lot of healing in me, because I'm still trying to find home. I know home is here, but it's just a challenge. And
Yeah.
I want to thank you for that.
Thank you, Ginger.
Ginger, I feel that. I feel that in you. That sense of belonging, you know, the psychological, um, uh, I don't have a word, you know, the results of being colonized, becoming colonized, you know. I made a decision when I realized that when what you are going through yourself, when I was going through that, just like when I told my dad, I'm not an addict. Alcohol is going to be there all the time. I'm not an alcoholic. Alcoholic's going to be always there, and I'm not, you know, I'm not going to use it no more. Therefore, I'm not an alcoholic. That was my take. Just like the identity crisis that we go through because of the boarding school days and because of schools, education in general. You know, we're trained to think a certain way, right? So one day I was sitting there thinking in Lakota, and I was thinking in Lakota as I was thinking, I was praying actually on a hill, and I'm going to do that this weekend again. And so I was up on the hill and I was thinking of praying in Lakota, and suddenly my praying ended abruptly by my own thinking, English thoughts coming in, and I'm like, what the heck? Is there two of me or what? You know? And so then I started praying. I told you before I asked Jesus for answers. So I asked him then, and then I just went back to my praying in Lakota. When I came down from there after, you know, you kind of reflect on things, I realized that, okay, I have two cultures in me. No wonder they call it bicultural. I am me. I'm first of all me, Malakota. Lakota wiya hemacha. Namatakunichni. Namatuichni. I am me. I am a Lakota woman. I am nobody. I am nothing. I am only Lakota. Ikstewistacha. Only a human being. But now I have two ways of thinking about things, which is a plus. And so that was in the 90s. And during the time I was going in graduate school, I learned how to use both of those at that time. I learned how to explain things to myself, concepts in linguistics that I just could not get. I put them in Lakota, tried to, and then I would get them in English. I would write them in English and I would get them. So in that sense, and I was still in my, you know, I was in my early 40s then, and I think that because of our experience, we have to learn to we actually have to learn to accept the two different ways, because otherwise we'll cause ourselves conflicts. So we learn to think when I'm being this and when I'm being that. And as far as anybody else is concerned, as long as they're not paying your rent or living your life, paying your insurance, paying your house bills or anything like that, it don't matter. They don't matter to me. I think I'm pretty much alone. So the sense of belonging, I say, okay, I have a good sense of belonging. I belong to my ancestors. Thank you.
Thank you, Violet. If
Did that help you, Ginger? Did I answer your question?
Yes, thank you so much.
Can Ginger still hear me?
Yeah, I can. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thank you, Violet. If someone has one final relatively short question, we can take that, and then we can finish. Violet, if there's another question, if you'd like to finish with a prayer, I think that would be wonderful. If you're inclined to do.
Okay.
But let's see if there's maybe one more question or comment from someone. Ken, it looks like you've got your hand up. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ken, and when I was 3 months old, I had polio in 1954, and I was taken away from my mother and my family and put in a hospital. Nothing at all like your experience, but when I got back home, I found out much later that I was a different child. My parents, I was this bright, happy boy, and then I was dull, and they didn't understand. They didn't know why I would be that way. And so for a long time, they kind of punished me for being the way I was. And now I have compassion because I was taken away during critical development time. So I wanted to share that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ken. Violet, if you would like to offer a prayer, I think that would be a wonderful way to close our being together today. Violet, I see a chat from you that you can't hear. Let's just wait a second and maybe it'll resolve. Can you hear me yet?
I can hear you now.
Okay, good.
Everybody still froze. Oh, there we go. Here we go. So you want me to do a prayer? I'm going to do it in my language. Before I do that, there's been this message on chat, and I think it's beautiful. Um, because for some reason, the mourning doves are really wanting attention everywhere, it seems like. So know this, every morning I feed flock of mourning doves, while white-winged doves, doves of several varieties. Know this, beautiful friend, many times a day I go out and feed them. They are a gift and from this day. Washte means good. Washte means good. They are our messengers for some reason. And I think they carry the memories of our ancestors, as I and that they're named after one of the very first birds the Creator made, and that's the thunder being. So Wakia means thunder, and Wakia Oyate is thunder nation, and that's part of my religion. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and say a prayer in Lakota, and I'm going to end it with like Amen. It's going to say Mitakuye Owasi at the end of my prayer. But a lot of times, prayers are more powerful in the language that you speak naturally. Ho Tongashilo Kantanka Leche Ampetu Yakapi Yunka Dakiha Washte. Unsha Oyatima Ahiotake Tile Daku Awiyuk Champi na Daku Awachik Abhena Wachakiti Washte Gehetil Inshia Dokashkamhena Dayan Skampite. Tongashila Leampetuki Wuchotani Lena Iha Wuchawachila. Wo ableze Wuchawachila. Wo Ahwala Wuchawachila. Tongashila Hecher El Washitia Ahakala Eprekile. I ask the Creator, first of all, good health for each and every one of you and your families, and ask for answers to the prayers you are making, the concerns that you have, and the ask for health, understanding, and peace in our lives. Mitakuye Owasi.